Wayne's World. Don't you remember? It's 5, 4, 3. Don't you remember that from Wayne's World?
I couldn't remember where they stopped counting.
I think it was at the 2 point, and then Wayne and Garth are mouthing the like 2 and 1, and hey, you guys are mouthing, and they're like,
no, guys, no, you don't need to know.
yeah. Welcome to Movie Night Spotlight. I'm your host, Dave Lindsay, and I am joined again via Google Hangout with Liam O'Leary.
Sup, diggity.
Liam and I discussed the 2011 version of The Thing before, kind of kicking off our Halloween horror movie month. How many horror movies have you watched this month, Liam? Because I always say in October I'm going to catch up on some horror movies, and I always fail. I've watched like 5 or 6 in the 27 days of the month so far, and I might get like 1 or 2 more in.
Let's see. Between The Thing, I saw like, over the last 24 hours, I've seen like 3 zombie movies. 2 of them on Sci-Fi Channel, which actually weren't that bad. And then obviously Dawn of the Dead.
Which is the movie we'll be discussing today, the 1978
the original
Romero classic, not the Zack Snyder remake from the early 2000s.
I'm surprised you haven't seen that one, to be honest.
I haven't, and like so often is the case with what I say, it's part of the collection. It's on the must-watch list. The list is long but distinguished.
Indeed, it is.
I think when I went through my DVD collection one time, and this is going back a year or two,
Was this when we were counting it?
Nope, this wasn't when you and I were counting it. This was a separate time when I wanted to go through and just count how many movies were in the collection that I haven't watched. And it was like around 500. Now, this is specifically that I bought the DVD and haven't watched the DVD, so it might include something like, I recently bought Before Midnight the other day, and I've seen that in theaters, but I haven't watched the DVD yet since I bought it. Now, granted, that's the most extreme example that I can think of is Scorsese's New York, New York.
That's been on
the back burner for a while. That's been on my must-watch list for since I bought it. I bought it back in I think 04, 05, because I had met you and John at Bridgewater, and I can recall picking it up at Borders, R.I.P., and I remember talking to John on the phone. So it was early on for me knowing you guys that I picked that up. Because I also picked it up at the same time as Woody Allen's Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask, and I haven't watched that. But yeah, so stuff like Before Midnight, which I bought, or New York, New York, which I've bought and haven't watched. It's on that list. So Dawn of the Dead.
Definitely on that list. I remember there's been a long time. I would come and be like, man. When we would sit there and be like, what should we watch? You'd be like, man, I need to watch New York, New York one of these days.
Well, it's been on the board here too for over a year. I think it might be getting close to 2 years that it's been on the board, and we still haven't watched it yet because it's one of those movies that I think the length is holding us back. It's about 2:45, 2 hours and 45 minutes around there, and not one of the Lord of the Rings movies or Avatar or something where you're more inclined to just pop it in and watch it. New York, New York, I kind of want to pay attention to, and it's not even for a Scorsese movie. It's not like Gangs of New York or Goodfellas. One of his epics like that. It's not The Godfather from Coppola or something. So I'll get to it one of these days. I swear. It's on. I got to cross it off. I have 2. It's on 2 lists now that I have to cross it off of. But we're not here to discuss Scorsese's New York, New York. We're here to discuss Romero's Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead.
Which has been a favorite of yours for a long time. I finally watched it. Speaking of list, this was one of them. I had purchased the original Dawn of the Dead, had to watch it, and you tossed it out there as a conversation to have on the podcast, and I finally crossed one off the list because of that. So thank you.
You are quite welcome, sir.
You've been a longtime fan of zombies in general. Not
a little bit, yes.
But
just a smidge.
But how long have you been a fan of Dawn of the Dead, the Romero one? I imagine.
The funny thing is with Dawn of the Dead, it took me a while to get around to watching it. I knew of it, and I remember back when we were kids. They used to put all sorts of crazy ass shit on TV. Like I remember catching parts of it on TV. I remember my uncle having it. Back in like the 80s, the early 90s, something like that. And I remember catching little bits of it, but my mom and my cousins and they would always try and be like, no, Liam, you're too little. No, you shouldn't watch this. Blah 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 blah. But I'd always end up catching bits and pieces of it. But as my fascination with zombies kind of grew and grew as the 90s wore on, I remember hearing it. Like this is for a lot of people, this is the zombie movie to end all zombie movies. So I kind of mulled around about thinking, I should watch this. Everyone says how great it is, and probably had to have been, I want to say maybe before I went to Bridgewater. I actually sat down and watched it all the way through. So I'd say my love for it goes probably at least 10 years, I'd say.
Yeah, that's around 2002, 2003, you probably finally saw it then.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. Because I think I probably picked it up when I was at GameStop, when I was working there.
Right. And what were your first thoughts? I imagine they might have changed over the years, but can you remember what you first thought about it?
Being introduced to zombies as far as movies go through Return of the Living Dead, and Tom Savini, who stars in this movie, Tom Savini's remake of Night of the Living Dead that he made back in 1990. Being introduced to those two, as far as the carnage factor, I remember feeling it was kind of tame by comparison, but you see, I feel like there's so many things that so many other zombie movies would emulate, like just on historical context alone. I mean, it's a great movie. I love it, but I feel like just on historical context alone, this movie is very important to like every other zombie movie that would follow thereafter. So it wasn't as maybe violent or as gory as I would expect it to be. Although it is pretty gory, but it's not as
at the
visceral.
end of the movie than earlier on. I mean, once the biker gang breaks into the mall and lets the zombies in, that's when it finally starts to raise the gore factor. But even early on, after the news broadcast scene, and then once you finally are introduced to the zombies in the hallways and their stairwells and everything, even that's not too gory. I mean, there's some bad fake blood scenes, but it wasn't, the intestines.
Oh, I love those. Those are hilarious.
It wasn't the intestines oozing out like you see in the last 15, 20 minutes.
No, it definitely. I feel like in other zombie movies, I feel like they're more violent, more visceral a little bit than this one was. But it's definitely one of those things that when I watched it, I understood why everyone liked it. I understood why it was so important to a person at the time who just wants to see something that's just carnage and this and that and the other thing. It's kind of like okay, but the more I get into zombies in general, the more appreciation I've gained for it over the years.
Right. And as far as that's concerned too, like we're coming at it from the our age and this time period, like the 2003 era when you saw it, or even now 2013. Zombies are everywhere today from when I'm first seeing it. And the special effects just alone have come a long way since 1978. So this might have been groundbreaking in '78. It's especially following right around the same time as Carpenter's Halloween, kind of using the modern slasher. This is, I feel, is following the same path in kind of introducing the modern zombie movie.
Definitely. I mean, if I suppose if one were to say that Psycho kind of introduced the modern slasher as we know it, and Night of the Living Dead was kind of the same way for zombie movies, and just like the slasher as we know it today, spawning off of especially John Carpenter's Halloween, you're right. This is exactly the same way. For every zombie movie that has followed is taking its cues from the original Dawn of the Dead.
Now, the movie kind of, it's fun seeing everybody run around and everything in the beginning, and you see this group of people, the police officers and their girlfriends and everything, trying to find a safe place to go, and they eventually find this mall, the Monroeville Mall, which isn't specified by name in the movie, but it's become famous for being used in the movie. It's referenced if you watch Zack and Mary Make a Porno. The hockey team that Rogen's character plays on is the Monroeville Zombies. What is it specifically about the movie that just hits a chord with you and that makes you love it? Because for a lot of the movie, it's kind of not even a zombie movie. It's just the people living in the mall. There's a few incidents when they're trying to break into that convenience store and everything, and they're trying to keep the zombies out of the store and set up their safe haven in the mall. But I don't know, for a lot of it, I felt like there wasn't even zombies being a big part of it for a good chunk of the movie.
What I really appreciate, and I only rewatched it a few hours ago. But the thing that really struck me as I'm watching it this time around is at the beginning, it's not like what you see in a lot of modern zombie scenarios where everything really just disintegrates quickly. It seems like the zombie apocalypse just kind of just hits and that's it. Everything just breaks down. Here, if one were to assume that this is supposed to directly follow Night of the Living Dead, you're listening to the cops and you're listening to the people at the TV network. They're saying how it's gotten bad over the past 3 or 4 weeks. So we're to assume that the apocalypse has actually taken on it's been drawn out a lot more, and you're watching the slow death of a lot of the elements of civilization as we know it, and that's kind of what is scary to me.
Yeah, because the biker gang, towards the end there, I think a couple guys see him on the roof, so the people are living in there, we got to get in there too, and immediately they don't even try and do it civilly, they just go in right for the attack, and then the couple of guys who are left living in the mall are setting up, almost Home Alone style traps, I feel, or about to, or think about it, they're just closing all the gates and everything, but they don't even try and be civil and be like, hey, we're some humans still alive in this world being taken over by zombies, maybe we should band together, and nope, immediately just fighting each other and letting the zombies in and eating them.
That's something I feel like, I honestly think Dawn of the Dead may have been the first to really tackle that as an issue in a hypothetical zombie scenario, because honestly, I feel like Romero was the only one, although that really wasn't necessarily his intent when he was making them, but I think he was the first one to really start to address these kind of issues in a hypothetical zombie apocalypse, what would actually happen. For you or I, especially, because of, but I feel like a lot more people are thinking about a hypothetical situation like that today where zombies are everywhere. But back in the late 70s, he was the only one who was throwing these out. And all zombie movies previously, it was pretty much the people versus the zombies. He touched on it a little bit in Night of the Living Dead because that was, that whole thing is essentially his vehicle for social commentary about race in the 60s. But this one is the first one where someone has addressed the idea that even in a situation where we're facing extinction, there are still going to be people out there who don't care, who aren't going to try and help out other people. They're just going to be in it for themselves and will pillage, rape, murder, destroy any other things that other people have simply to satiate their own needs for what have you, for money, for valuables, for fuel, for food, for whatever. I feel like this is really the first foray into this, in a real world situation. The bad people are going to continue to be bad.
Right. So, what's your favorite scene involving zombies? Was it, the opening and in the stairwells? Was it, that scene I referenced earlier where they're trying to get into that certain department store in the mall and trying to keep close the door and all the zombies are trying to get in? Was it the final 15 minutes when the zombies finally, truly do attack? Or was it the scene with the trucks and trailers trying to blockade the door and the guy drops his bag in between the two trucks? Like, which one was your favorite scene involving the zombies?
I suppose my sentimental favorite, just because it makes me laugh, is the scene where the bikers that are left behind are getting tackled by the zombies, and there's the one guy who, for whatever reason, is all about playing around with the blood pressure machine. I remember, them using it. I don't think they have them now, but I remember going to Sears at the South Shore Plaza, and they had one of those. I remember seeing that thing back then. That has to be my sentimental favorite, because the idiot there, he's literally surrounded by 18 zombies. And he decides, you know what, I'm just going to slip my arm into the blood pressure machine, even though they're literally feet away from me. And they just rip him right off of the machine and just eat him. And it's like, what the hell are you doing?
Right. I also found it interesting towards the end there when I forget his name, but the dude gets he's trapped in the elevator, gets Steve, he gets attacked by the zombies, and then eventually the doors open and reveal that he's now become a zombie. For my understanding, zombies are pretty much brainless beyond brains, the typical what you associate zombies with. But this guy seemed to have some sort of instinct to where to go. And, he ends up walking over to where they've kind of been hiding out. A herd of zombies follow him. And they magically, I don't know how they broke down that wall. It must have been like a paper wall.
Yeah, if you notice, it looks like it was just really, really flimsy.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of funny there, just because I was like, really? Zombies have that sort of instinct to know where to go? They have some sort of memory or some sort of something drawing them to certain places. I thought that wasn't part of their attributes, but might have learned something with this movie here.
It's funny as I think about it. A lot of the conventional things that we think about with zombies, it's kind of like what we think about with vampires. Bram Stoker kind of laid down a lot of the groundwork for what we usually think of about vampires. And you'll see other media, other stories, be they written or visual, where certain things kind of defy convention. There'll be a vampire like, ha ha ha, crosses don't do anything to me. But it's kind of the same thing when it comes to zombies. Nowadays, they're almost universally completely brain dead. They are just compelled simply by the instinct to feed, and that's all they really do.
Right.
But Romero, if you follow all through his Of the Dead series, in almost all of them, certainly in his middle three, which are Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and Land of the Dead, you slowly see that the zombies are regaining some rudimentary ability to learn. This is the first one where you see that they retain a teeny amount of memory, which, if you're watching, for people out there, if they're really watching the movie, you realize, while the character's like, oh, well, maybe they're coming here because of memory, that's kind of what compels them to come to the mall. Well, part of it. The other is, especially as you watch the end, you realize they're compelled because they can somehow detect that there are people around. Between memory and the knowledge that there's people around, that's what compels them. Of course, Day of the Dead, there's some idiot scientist, which is why I wrote that in the rules. There's some idiot scientist who starts teaching them how to use firearms. By Land of the Dead, they actually know how to, you'll see them picking up and using firearms, if only in a very cavemanish kind of way. But you see that they have a bit of a learning curve.
Right.
And it's something that...
have you seen Warm Bodies yet? Came out this past February around Valentine's Day.
No, I have not.
Because in that one of the cool aspects of it was it's like, to us, the humans, they're just brain-dead zombies, and we're trying to fight against them. It was cool showing, their inner monologue, and, the guy's like, well, I can't anybody understand me. Oh, I can't actually speak. I can think of something. I can say I want to do this, I want to do that, but I can't actually speak. So it's interesting seeing, that there's the typical brain-dead zombies, but that they have that inner monologue as if they were still alive. It was a cool aspect of the movie that, sounds like you're saying they're slowly developing, now that we're past Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, they're slowly developing those little things inside their head that, to the average human running around being like, oh, no, that's trying to eat me. It's not thinking about.
Yeah. And depending on which zombie movies you're familiar with, if you watch some of the Return of the Living Dead, those zombies can talk and can actually hold conversations. So it depends on where you're getting your zombies from will determine how smart or dumb they happen to be.
Now, we referenced that Dawn of the Dead has been remade. Zack Snyder did that going back 10, 11 years now.
Yep.
I haven't seen that one yet. Again, it's part of the collection. I haven't watched it yet, though. I'm assuming you have.
I have. I've seen it a couple of times.
Which version do you prefer?
I like. Part of me prefers the Zack Snyder one, if for no other reason than I feel like the zombies are much more of a definite threat in that one than they are in the original. If you're looking for the zombies to be scary and be dangerous, I feel like the Zack Snyder version, you're definitely going to get more of it there. Conversely, one of the things that kind of scares me about the original, kind of watching the slow degrading of civilization as we know it, that goes by much faster in the Zack Snyder version. So it's kind of a toss-up. Zombies, less downfall.
I hope the zombies in Zack Snyder's looks a lot better, considering that basically all they did in George A. Romero's original was paint their faces a bluish gray. That was definitely another one of those aspects that was tough for me going back because having become a big fan of Walking Dead and everything, and all the the zombies and how they look, each one's different, and all the pieces of the zombies falling off, all the blood, all the limbs falling off, compared to
chunks of their face, and
compared to Romero's, where the only difference between a human and a zombie is just some blue-gray face paint. Not even the hands were blue; the hands were still normal. It was a little disappointing, I have to admit. But again, like I said, it's what today's depiction of a zombie is influencing my perspective of what they're supposed to look like. So you go back to something like Dawn of the Dead, real disappointed because it's not up to today's standard. But I imagine back in '78 that was enough, and I'm sure there's a budget constraint on doing more with them, but
probably. But Tom Savini, his skills evolved as he went along. because you'll notice I'm pretty sure he was still the makeup artist for Day of the Dead. I don't know if he also did the makeup for his version of Night, but you can definitely see a more distinct look on the zombies in Day of the Dead. They're looking more sallow-faced, like they're starting to look a little wrinkly because extended exposure, I guess, has kind of desiccated their skin. So you can definitely see the evolution of his makeup work as the series went along.
Right. So besides Romero's, of the Dead series, and we've referenced Warm Bodies, and I'm assuming Zombieland is on one of your favorite zombie movie lists.
The opening is terrifying. Yeah. I love it.
And you love the use of For Whom the Bell Tolls in the credits there.
Awesome.
Name off some of your other, in no particular order, and it doesn't have to be top 5 or whatever. Just name off some of your other favorite zombie movies.
I have a sentimental place in my heart for Return of the Living Dead 2. I mean, the Return of the Living Dead series is much campier than Romero's, but it was the first one to... basically, my love-hate relationship with zombies stems from having watched that movie. And as I think about it, the genesis for for what we will discuss later stemmed from seeing that movie and being like, why would you let that happen? In fact, there's a part where there's one girl, and I didn't realize that they did the same thing in the first Return of the Living Dead, but in the second one, there's a part where this girl's being chased by her now zombified boyfriend, and he somehow convinces her, if you love me, you let me eat your brains, and she agrees to it. There's no other zombies around at that, in her location. It's just her and him, and they're in this church. She's got plenty of room to run around, but he somehow manages to convince her to let him eat her brains. And I'm just like, even as a little kid, I remember sitting there, being scared out of my mind, but being like, why would you let him do that? That's so stupid. But that pretty much that kind of got me started on zombies in the first place. Let's see.
Isn't 28 Days Later one of your other favorites?
Oh, definitely. There's so much. I honestly think that 28 Days Later was what helped kickstart the popularity of zombies over the last decade. I feel like that definitely kind of injected some much-needed life into the undead.
And then that was followed by 28 Weeks Later, right?
Yep. I can't remember when they did that one. But yeah, it's followed by 28 Weeks. Another of my favorites, which we've seen, is Diary of the Dead.
Yes, that was a very good one.
I really enjoyed that one. That's another of Romero's commentary, in this case, on, I suppose, media neutrality, I guess, where you've got reporters just filming, like, wars going on and atrocities, and they're like, oh, well, I'm behind the camera, I'm supposed to be neutral to this. And that's kind of Romero being like, really? You really can be neutral when you're watching horrible things going on? And that's kind of his critique on that, I think.
And there was a cool use of the first-person perspective, which, kind of reached a popularity after the Blair Witch Project, but, now with stuff like Cloverfield and the Paranormal Activity movies.
Quarantine, another of my favorites.
But Quarantine was a big one. Again, a news reporter following along. But Quarantine was... I've heard people say those aren't quite zombies just because of the reason they're returning. Like, they're not necessarily dead, but they're not exactly human anymore after... Let's just spoil it. After they get the rabies, they catch rabies from each other.
Like super rabies.
Yeah. Which I also liked too in Quarantine 2. I haven't seen Wreck, which the Quarantine movies are, supposedly remakes of. But Quarantine 2 breaks that mold and doesn't do the first-person point of view and references what's going on in the first one. But Quarantine's definitely a good one.
Definitely. I'm trying to think of other zombie movies that I like. I get, I get some giggles out of ones like Night of the Creeps.
I haven't even heard of that.
It's a really campy, goofy zombie movie from the 80s, where they're like these. I want to say they're like leeches from space that they attack a person and they kill the host and then turn the host into a zombie, so they can spread more leeches. I think actually Slither. Did Zack Snyder direct that?
Slither? I don't know. I don't think so though.
He might have. But I feel like
around the time of Slither, he was getting ready to go into either 300 or Watchmen. So
I have to figure out who did Slither, but I feel like Slither is paying homage to Night of the Creeps with the little space leeches and what have you. I'm trying to think of another zombie movie that I really happen to enjoy. Oh, I've mentioned it 500,000 times. I have to. It's on probably one of my top. It is one of my top 5 horror movies. Tom Savini's remake of The Night of the Living Dead. I really, really get a kick out of that one. It's not quite. It doesn't make you think as much as the original, but I feel like it's scarier than the original.
Now, with everything you've learned from zombie movies, how do you survive one?
Well, see, the thing is, you need to have a plan. I'm hoping you have a plan.
I don't.
Well,
I would just be like, if a zombie were to, come to the house right now, I would just probably give up or throw a DVD case at him or go for the knife. But
so now you're thinking.
Yeah.
That's the first step. You have some idea as to what you're gonna do.
I would be a goner though. I'd be the one huddled up in the corner or trying to find a hiding spot where I don't think the zombies could get in, but they always get in.
Yeah, if they know you're there, they're probably gonna get in sooner or later.
Right.
Well, see, I came up with a means of trying to figure out a plan. It's called The Rules, A Guide to Surviving the Zombie Apocalypse. Yes, this is my shameless plug. But if any Movie Night Spotlight kind of opens the door to do it, this one would be it.
Sure, plug away.
If you just want to chuckle, or maybe you really think that there might be zombies someday, come and pick this up. You can find it on Amazon.com. You can find it on iTunes and on Xlibris.com. Be smart. Follow the rules.
Okay, so you have this whole book. It's about 200 pages. Lots of rules on there, lots of examples. What are the top 5 rules? Like, I know there's a lot in there, but what are the first 5 rules in no specific order that you need to follow to survive the zombie apocalypse?
Let's see. Oh. Number 5. Avoid cities, tunnels, bridges, and hospitals and highways as best as humanly possible. Because those are the kind of places that you're going to get trapped and outnumbered like 1,000 to 1. Just avoid them at all possible.
But they go to a hospital and diary the dead.
They do, but sure enough, there are zombies there. I mean, depending on how bad the situation gets, like if they were, because the hospital wasn't in Pittsburgh or Philly. If they were in Pittsburgh or Philly, it would just be awful. There'd be zombies everywhere. It's going to be ground zero. Cities, terrible. More people, more zombies. Bad idea. Bridges and tunnels. I mean, at least in a tunnel, they have access doors. You've probably seen them going into Boston. I know I've seen them. They'll have little access doors sometimes. If you're lucky, you could get in one. Bridges? Where are you going to go?
You could jump off and into the water.
Yeah, but I don't know if you're going to survive. Depending on how high the bridge is, I don't know if you're going to survive that fall.
They do that in action movies all the time.
If you need to cross the by route, you're better off just swimming. Just get down to the bottom and just swim. Screw it.
Just hope that the fish aren't zombies.
Yes, that is true. Number 4. Remember Murphy's Law. You have to anticipate that however things are going, they have the distinct possibility, if not the probability, to get worse. You've got a car, well, expect it to break down. Expect it to run out of gas. You go to the gas station, expect it to be no gas. Expect the attendant to be a zombie.
Which we learned in Dawn of the Dead. They go to fill up the helicopter and one of the pumps is empty.
And there are zombies there.
Yeah.
Exactly. You have to expect that things are going to go from bad to worse. Right?
Which we're seeing this year in Walking Dead. The first episode's it's picking up 6 or 7 months after the conclusion of season 3. They got some farming. The other day. Yeah, they got they're farming. They got a big group of people together. They kind of made the prison a little town, a little resort if you want, because it's a prison. Everybody's living under one roof. But it's The Walking Dead. Things are about to get crazy.
Yeah.
And especially at the end of that one when you see the bookworm
trying to take a shower.
And he turns, and especially now, one of the cool things, I don't know if you've watched the episodes of Talking Dead yet.
No, I haven't.
I think it was last week's episode. They had a special effects guru, Greg Nicotero, on, and he was talking about how you'll see the traditional zombies that have been on the show forever, but now you might see some with different makeup, and those are the zombies that have potentially turned without having been, haven't died naturally, haven't been killed, and haven't been bitten. They're just zombies that have turned.
That they just become it.
Yeah, they're so it's getting into the whole thing that was touched on briefly in season 1, where it's the airborne virus and everybody's infected, and you're starting to see that come out more, I guess, in this season. So things are going to get worse.
I have to remember to record tonight. I haven't set that to record yet. And I haven't watched the second episode of the season yet. I need to.
All right, so that's 2 rules. Avoid cities and bridges and tunnels, and Murphy's Law. Remember Murphy's Law. What's 3 more? Again, don't have to go in any order, but 3 more your top rules for surviving.
Number 3, make sure you have a clean source of water. So many people are, they expect to have to deal with zombies. They expect to, risk injury trying to escape them. They expect running into hostile living people. But I mean, if you don't get water for 3 days, that's it. You're done. You don't need to worry about injuries, zombies, people shooting at you. If you die of dehydration, you're still dead.
Right. You gotta be careful. You mentioned in the last episode we did that one of your favorite horror films is Cabin Fever. That's one of the movies. That's part
of the reason why.
That's one of the movies I did get to watching this month, and that was how people were turning and having their skin slowly decay, and it was weird. That was a very interesting movie.
Isn't it kind of creepy?
It is, and very funny at the same time.
Yes, I agree.
I really loved the end there with the old guy and the gun. I don't want to spoil it, and I don't want to say the word that was used, because it's a word we're not supposed to use. But when he first uses it, you're kind of like, I can't believe that old guy just said it. But he's that type of person.
He's like buddies with these guys.
He would say that word, and then you forget about it by the time the end comes, and you're distracted by the kids, filling up the jug with the tainted water from the pond, especially because it's definitely tainted now because one of the main characters died into the lake.
Yeah.
You're seeing the kids make lemonade with this tainted water, and then you see people going to the store and the old guy hand them the gun, and you're like, that's what he meant, that it's for them. Okay. It was hilarious. But yeah, tainted water. Gotta be careful of it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you run the risk of dehydration to begin with, and honestly, that movie was exactly what I was thinking of when the thought occurred to me. You have no idea what would cause people to become zombies. And until you know, you have to assume that it could be anything. It could be in the water. It could be anything.
Yeah, and in this week's the first week of season 4 of Walking Dead, you mentioned that guy dies at the end, showering himself off and everything, and then they mentioned it on Talking Dead that the water that these people have been using in the prison might be tainted now. What could happen?
I mean,
they don't know.
I saw the pig die. I have no idea why, and I'm assuming they'll explain in the second episode.
Yeah.
But I sit there and look at I wouldn't eat anything that came from that pig. The pig just up and dies. God only knows what happened to it.
Right.
But it's the same thing with the water. Even if the virus isn't necessarily waterborne, all you need is for one zombie to fall into what you're using as a water supply, or to get killed and die in it.
Yeah.
And guess what? Everyone who drinks it, sooner or later, they're becoming a zombie.
Yeah, because then you go back to season 2 on the farm with Herschel and all them, and they go to the well, and there's the zombie down at the bottom of the well, and they're like, well, there goes our water supply.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just gross.
And number 4.
Let's see. Number 2. Do not panic. Seriously, more people would probably die in a zombie apocalypse from getting trampled by a stampede of panicking people than they would by zombies.
But Woody the Cowboy says this is the perfect time to panic.
No, there's never a perfect time to panic. I don't care what that cowboy says. Panicking is bad. Panicking is what turns normally rational people into people who will oh, well, I have to go out there. My dog is out there. And open the door, and guess what? Every zombie in town gets poured in. They're the kind of people who will kind of snap and may even shoot other living people because they're afraid. Oh, well, you might turn to one of them for all I know. Panic is bad. Panic is bad normally.
Right.
When you throw zombies into the mix, terrible idea. Terrible. And last, and definitely not least, in fact, I could swear on a stack that it is rule number 1. Familiarize yourself with your surroundings. Because when you're dealing with zombies, you always have to consider that you're going to need to escape. No matter how secure you may be, you never know if you're going to have to, if you're going to get overrun, you have to leave. So it helps to have an idea as to where you are relative to everything else and to where you may want to go. Because if you, let's say you're vacationing in San Francisco and you don't know a damn thing about the place, and all of a sudden there are zombies, you'll have no idea where to go. You'll be stuck in the middle of a huge city filled with zombies and have no idea where to go to get out of there. And you have no idea where to find water, where to find food, where to find guns, where to find anything. It's one of those ounce prevention things. If you just know a little bit more about where you are and where you want to go, you'll be so much better off than that person running around like a chicken with their head cut off.
It's true, but I don't know if you've seen this summer's World War Z. They got caught by surprise in a city. They were trapped in a road, a crowded street. Brad Pitt saved the day. I imagine he was going on impulse. So it is doable. Just saying.
It is.
If Brad Pitt can do it.
Well, I mean, he's Brad Pitt.
He was staying at home. He had left his job. He was just staying at home cooking pancakes, taking his kids to school, saving them from the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. And that's like telling me that Bruce Willis can do it. Of course Bruce Willis can do it. It's the same thing.
I don't think Bruce Willis could do it, but Bruce Willis is John McClane. Now you're talking.
Definitely. John McClane could definitely get America out of the zombie apocalypse.
Right. Now, I don't know if you saw SNL last night, but they did a new horror movie trailer, which I want to see if it lives up. And it doesn't have to do specifically with zombies. but I want to see if it meets the approval of the guy that wrote the rules. So
okay, lay it on me.
Let me just share my screen right now.
Fair enough.
I'm going to switch windows.
In theaters this Halloween comes a new vision of horror like you've never seen before. From the twisted mind of Wes Anderson, it's the midnight coterie of sinister intruders, starring Owen Wilson as a man in danger.
Wow, what the heck? There's a bunch of crazy people standing in our yard.
Does that follow the rules? In that little clip, in that little trailer, does it follow the rules? Do you need a flag?
If the flagpole is pointy enough, then yes.
That looked like a little flag, like the kind you'd be waving on the streets as the 4th of July parade goes by. I don't know if that'd be pointy enough. And I don't even know if you could whittle it down to be pointy enough to... You know.
Well, I mean, if something that small, you whittle that down, you got a toothpick.
You could clean the zombie's teeth. I'm sure they have some other humans, guts stuck in between their teeth.
Well, generally you want to avoid their teeth, of all things, as much as possible.
Right. But they have the assault rifle.
Check.
Right.
They have the Swiss Army knife, which there's actually a rule specifically for Swiss Army knives. Check.
Yeah.
The hammer. Check.
Yeah.
Firecrackers. Maybe.
Could be used for distraction. You could set them off, and they're
go the other way.
Exactly.
I was actually thinking that you could use those to distract the zombies.
Same thing if you had maybe not exactly a firecracker, but a flare. If you had a flare gun and you could set one off,
Yeah.
Because if we learned anything from Zombieland, when they turn on the amusement park rides, zombies are attracted to that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's almost universal that they're attracted to lights, movement, sound. Sometimes by smell. And in that case, that's pretty bad.
Now, what about the picture?
That would be interesting. I'm not sure how it would work.
I mean, it could be important. I mean, if you brought a picture of your family, for history purposes, keeping your family tree alive.
Yes.
A random picture like they were kind of suggesting, but a picture of my family, might help you remember the past and restart the future,
Yeah. It having a picture of your family or your friends would have, some purposes on Z-Day. Even if all it does is help you to remember people who you may have lost. It's certainly better than having a random picture of, just whoever. But yeah, it could help. The ship in the bottle as a weapon, no. I think it'd make a pretty bad weapon.
You could take the ship in the bottle and then, break the bottle over a zombie's head and then stab him with the shards of glass.
Yeah, but you'd probably need a good thing of duct tape. So you wrap around the shard, you have like a handle so you don't cut yourself, and then stab them with the shard.
Excuse me. No, you could just use the end of the bottle. You could use that as kind of your handle, and then break it over the butt end over the zombie's head, and then your hand's still good. And come on.
Yeah, you could do that. You could get away with that. Wouldn't be the greatest weapon in the world, but it could work.
All right. So what you're saying is, if you want to survive the zombie apocalypse, follow the rules.
Of course.
Naturally.
I mean, you can try and go without them, but I'd say your chances are better with the rules than without.
Now, would you say that the people in the version of Dawn of the Dead we watched, the 1978 Romero original, did they follow the rules?
To a certain degree. I noticed one of the SWAT officers, Peter, pick up a zombie and essentially throw him off the second floor of the mall to the first floor. It's kind of at the bottom of the zombie killing pyramid as far as means of killing them goes. But in a pinch, you can try to use gravity to your advantage.
I also did find it interesting that the zombies didn't seem that eager to bite the people. Like, they were more like, oh, I'm attracted to you, I'm just going to bump into you a bunch until, like, 30 seconds goes by, then I'll try and bite you. It seemed like the humans had a lot of time to try and, take care of the zombies, and that even, a karate kick to the jaw was enough to take the zombies out, so...
Well, one thing that is, I feel like if anything beyond, I feel like if there's anything that has kind of carried over to a large degree from Romero's representation of zombies, is that kind of slow, plodding pace, which, it kind of makes logical sense. I mean, I feel like running is something that requires a little bit of thought. Like the things that chase things are active predators, things that are alive. With zombies, with them being essentially brain dead, the capacity to be like, hey, that thing's moving fast, I should try to move faster to catch them. I don't think they have the capacity to do that. Right. But pretty much anytime you see a slow zombie in anything else, they're taking that cue from Dawn of the Dead. That's
what I liked about you mentioned Quarantine earlier, and I mentioned that they're not quite zombies, they're zombie-esque, but since like I said, they don't actually die then turn. It's more like they get bitten and immediately turn, and like 30 seconds they turn. So they're not the traditional definition of what a zombie is in Quarantine. That's what I liked about it too. Is like once they saw you, the person gets bitten and turns, and they see you, the human, they're coming at you like you were the guy with the football. And that's what made Quarantine a lot of fun and broke up the mold from, the typical slow walkers that we're used to with zombies.
When it comes to Quarantine and 28 Days Later and certain other slightly more non-traditional zombie movies, Crazies falls into this too.
Crazies was cool. I haven't seen the Timothy Olyphantastic one was a remake, right?
Yes.
I haven't seen the original, but I have seen the remake. That one was
Crazy was also actually another of Romero's movies.
Oh, cool.
I don't know when he made it, though. I have to double check. But with movies like that, to me, what makes a zombie more than anything else, yeah, they can be dead, they can be alive, but the big thing, they don't even necessarily have to be cannibalistic. I mean, they usually are, like 9 out of 10 times they are. But they need to have at least two characteristics. One, they need to be violent to some degree. Whether it's cannibalistic violence or just, I'm just going to kill whoever else I see that isn't like me, they have to be violent. Two, and this is the more important one, they almost all have to be, to one degree or another, brain dead. The ability for higher thinking and rational thought, gone. And that to me is what makes a zombie. They don't need to be dead, but if they've stopped having rational thought, if they've stopped really thinking, you can call them a zombie. Officially.
I like that example that they used at the end of season 1 of Walking Dead, where the guy was explaining, like, right, so this is the normal activity of the human mind. When you become a zombie, it's just this little flicker. You've only got one thing that you're after, and that's it. You only have that little flicker, and that consumes your entire thought process. I really like that as an example of what makes a zombie beyond just The Walking Dead, to explain it simply.
Yeah. I feel like over time, other movies and TV shows and what have you have made more efforts to really help define what truly makes a zombie a zombie. I mean, the idea as to what makes a zombie, what causes something to be a zombie, is always kind of up in the air for the most part. But that's always, over time they've said, okay, no matter what, zombie is, they do this, And everything else is just kind of gravy.
Excellent. So clearly you're a fan of Dawn of the Dead.
I am.
Clearly everybody needs to prepare for the zombie apocalypse by reading The Rules, written by Liam. As you said, it's available on Amazon, iTunes, and the Zobers, the publisher of the book.
Yes.
And I think that'll wrap it up for this episode of Movie Night Spotlight. I'm Dave Lindsay.
I'm Liam O'Leary.
Follow the rules, everybody.
Let it.